Why not analytic or continental? What is it that makes classical philosophy unique or different from the others?
I would just bluntly say is that because the ancients were right. So yeah, I do kind of like to say this provocatively. I say that, like Parmenides was right, Plato was right, Heraclitus was right, Thales was right, but they were right in certain respects. I really want, and part of why I'm saying it like like that is because I'm also reacting towards the way that people's, the common sort of notion of philosophy as like either a proto-science or this sort of like view of like the history of philosophy is just like, ideas succeeding other ideas, and just bringing the old, throwing out the new, and all that. When it's not always that like that. It's the way that I see philosophy as in history is similar to how like it was presented by the Frederick Copleston's in his History of Philosophy. He sees it as a discourse throughout time, and it usually is the same things being passed down that people are engaging in, and those are when looking into the ancients and all that, you look at Thales. He said that all is water. You look at then you look at the successors saying that it's air, and then you get to Heraclitus saying that it's fire. But this in saying this, what are they actually saying? And people tend to take it that it's just maybe just merely a scientific hypothesis before you can even do quote unquote do science and all properly. And that's kind of that's where I said that's where it's a misconception of what the Greeks were doing. In a sense, they were doing science, but of course, science how it was traditionally understood, not necessarily because they just didn't had a correct perception of science. No, it's just that when it comes to them, Thales, let's go to Thales there, saying that, all is water. What he is really saying is not that, like, this is my scientific hypothesis in the sort of the modern sort of sense about it, and everything, everything is solved or something like that. That's not necessarily what is going on there. He's saying all is water, but at the same time, he's also saying that, all has gods or all has souls too. And that gives you a better idea of what this is sort of saying in a way there. But you find what you find is a declaration of like what is this that all things have in common. What is it that is there? Because there seems to be that on the appearance of difference, on the appearance of change and all, nothing at all is kind of in a sense not staying like as one, but at the same time there is this sort of thing beyond like the experience in itself, where kind of like there is something being shared and all that. So like I guess to say this is like what is that thing that is all things have in common? What is that common principle? This would be like the arche, and so when Thales is saying that all is water, what he said the arche is water, and that's to say that that is and this is like what I mean about it's not merely like just like a proto-scientific hypothesis or so and all that. Yes, it's scientific, but in the more traditional sense of that term. We're not merely talking about the physical sciences like that of what we see today with physics, chemistry, and the rest. But we are seeing that we're going from what it merely appears to what there is. And so that would be like the way that I say that like the Greeks had it right. The ancients overall had it right. And what you see from Thales onward is this consideration of the arche and all that. That's what you see with Heraclitus, and Heraclitus has more things to say than just simply saying that all is in flux. Too, he's also considering the same things that his predecessors were considering, and that's why you find things like, for example, his understanding of logos, or divine law, and so anyway, the ancient. I guess you to kind of maybe put it all together, like the ancients had it right insofar as they understood that there was something beyond just merely what is appearance, what is beyond like this change. There is something that it kind of is one, you can say, and this something that stays, something that is immutable behind all that, it seems like all that seems changing at all times. But anyway, yeah, and so a lot of philosophy comes from those considerations, and everything else, then you get to the considerations of the good, and where does the good come from, and all of those. Yeah, so the ancients can bring us especially good answers on not just simply where to start to, where to go from, and yeah. And I think that a lot of like what we see nowadays with the breaking down of sort of like the way that academia is, and that some of the things being brought up, I like the sort of the intellectual sort of degradation and all that. I think this will bring us back into vindicating the ancients, which some people have declared, especially with the understandings of physics and all that, with the bringing back of like Platonism or Aristotelianism. There are some trends like that, but anyway, yeah, I would just leave it like that.
It's interesting you mentioned academia, because our next guest we're going to be having on is Robinson, specifically talking about academia and where it all went wrong. But a bit of a different question I wanted to pose to Nokoo. Say I'm, back to what we're saying, a layman, I say, Nokoo, I have no interest in philosophy because they were wrong. Not everything's made of water and all these things like that. He's like, I only have science. Why do I need philosophy when the science shows everything I need? What would your response be, in your humble opinion, to someone coming in abrasive like that to you?
Yeah, I would question what they're saying, which you said you cannot seem to answer with science. So I've come across people who care a lot about science, almost to a fault, and so my approach to them is often not even trying to make a case for philosophy, but more so asking them about their own science and how scientific they are in what they say. Because one of the ideologies that seems to be very common among people is that of scientism. But what I try to remind people that I come across that seem to promote this ideology is that ideology is not scientific. And so instead of trying to make a case for philosophy, in a philosophical way, I question them about their science, and then with the hope that they would become more scientific, and in becoming more scientific, becoming more open to philosophy, which is the foundation of science. But it's easy to kind of lose sight of that because we're so familiar with science and we think that it can answer every question. But that's what I would ask a question about. Can science answer every question? And the answer seems to be no. But that doesn't mean that science is unimportant, that we shouldn't bother with it, but more so that it has its place among other ways of coming to know and love God.
Thank you, Nokoo. And going on earlier, I know I asked about the many different schools of thought and philosophy. For both of you individually, what would you say is a school of philosophy that you most strongly disagree with, and why? Either of you, if you want to take that, John or Nokoo. Let's go, John.
I'll let Nokoo go first because he has a better way of bringing it about.
All right, let's hear it, Nokoo.
Yeah, so what school of philosophy do I disagree with the most? It's a good question because on the one hand, I'm thinking of schools of philosophy. On the other hand, I'm thinking of ideologies, and they seem to be distinct. So, but if I had to pick a school, it would be something like nominalism, because an American philosopher, Charles Sanders Peirce, he defined nominalism as the devil's philosophy. And there's a lot of wisdom behind that definition, because if people are going to be honest with, if they say, well, I'm a nominalist, which I've run into in Twitter spaces, then that has important implications. One of which is doing away with science. Often the nominalists that I come across, they love science, But I try to remind them that, okay, if you consider yourself a nominalist and you're going to be honest, then you're going to have to do away with science, which is what you love. So that would be my, if there was a school, that would be it. Nominalists